Hi there, my name is Gunnar Wettergren, and I'm going to talk a little bit about goals of product management. This is basically the introduction to the first part one of the textbook used in this course. And we're going to talk about what product management is, why we talk about it, and what is the goal of product management really. So this is going to be a short recording about this topic, and this is how it's going to be set up from now on. It's going to be a multiple short recordings focusing in on a certain amount of topics, trying to keep it as short as possible, but at the same time informative. All right, so the goal of project management, what is it? Well, the first thing we need to do in order to discuss this is to take a look at project management itself. This is not really a new concept, and I think the book uses quite a funny example, and which illustrates this really well, that product management has been around for years, for centuries, one could say. I mean, it's feasible to think that the Egyptians who built the pyramids used some sort of product management approach. There was management, I'm sure there was planning, structuring, what to do when, in what order things need to get done. And this is quite similar to what we talk about today in product management. So the concept itself is not new, that there needs to be some sort of planning to succeed in doing something, right? But what has happened, if you look at product management in the 70s, you wouldn't really say that there was a field called product management. Rather, we ran development projects, but not like we see them today inside organizations and in building very large IT systems. And one thing one has to remember was back then there weren't too many computers. Most systems were done for calculations or for business processes of some sort, but in very large scales and but very much technology-oriented projects. Today we see a much larger expansion, much larger proliferation of IT into organizations. We have ERP systems, there's a desktop on everyone's computers. Almost everyone who works nowadays works with computers in some way or another, so it has a much bigger impact on organization. So the discipline of product management has gone from being quite exotic, almost non-existent, to being very much mainstream and one of the important aspects of company development and company effectiveness and efficiency. So that's a big change that has basically created the field or the occupation of being a product manager. Okay. So the question then arises, why do we even talk about projects? Well, the obvious answer would be that it's the most efficient way we can take an idea to a product we know of. Up to this point, at least. Who knows what research and what the future has in store, but right now, having a project with a team working together, the synergies of group work is the best and most effective way we know of. Uh, another obvious answer is that it creates a very nice and very clear structure inside the organization. We have the line organization, which does the daily, day-to-day traditional work, and then we have the projects, and they sit very well next to each other, and they fit very well into the traditional matrix organization that most organizational entities use. Right? So one of the reasons is organizational clarity. It's easy to manage. There's also the idea of teamwork versus line work, and there's a lot of research has supporting this claim that it makes more sense, that it's more efficient and more effective to use teams that together focusing in on one specific thing develop a new product. There's very hard to do innovative work as part of your daily job. For example, technically you could just have a number of people working on an idea as part of their day-to-day grind, right? One could say, well, you spend 10 to 20% on working on this, and the rest of the time you work on your standard things. This would work, but it wouldn't be as good as efficient because it's hard for people to stay focused and it's hard for people to jump between different types of tasks, especially if it requires you to be innovative and come up with great solutions. So teams being able to spend time together, focusing in on one thing is a lot more structured and a lot more efficient than doing it as a part of the daily job. Because, like I said, multitasking is something that we are forced to do. It would be better if we wouldn't have to, because we're more efficient if we can focus on one thing. So, so projects have come up because one, it is an effective way of taking an idea to the market. Two, to protect the team from the organization and the day-to-day grind so that they can focus and be innovative around one thing. Those are, I would say, the two biggest areas of change and reasons why we have projects. All right. So one thing that we have to address, and if you look online, if you look at the Standish Group, for example, in their chaos report, they talk periodically. They talk quite a bit about why products fail and what the problems are and so on. And this is something we need to address, and this is something you need to think about as well. That yes, products some products do not achieve their goals, and the question is then why? And there's a lot of answers to this, but let's take an executive viewpoint on this. If I'm an executive decision maker, I decide to start a project and I realize this project is not living up to what it's supposed to. The question then is why, right? There's a lot of reasons. Uh, Unfortunately, a lot of them are outside the control of the project and the product manager most of the time. Questions like, why didn't we think of that? We forget things, or maybe not the product itself, but rather the people who order the product or the customer forgets things. Uh, we handle change quite clumsy. You know, I realize if I'm an executive, I realize, well, wow, we can change this. We have to implement this instead. And it's quite often that it's not very well thought through before we decide to make a change. So the question is, oh, okay, so we change this. What happens then, right? And this comes from the fact that during a project, everyone involved gets smarter. Well, they know more about the domain where the product is supposed to reside. We learn more about what IT can do, what kind of solutions it can give. So the customer or people around the product actually get smarter and more educated as the product progresses. This would inevitably lead to the fact that they realize that other things could be done as well, or things could be done in a different way, which leads to change, right? Another issue that is prevailing is the matter of politics, the political game that happens inside organizations that influences products as well, of course. It's not easy to run a project and achieve goals if we are forced to change goals halfway through because of political changes, right? We have deadline delays and forced deadlines. And one of the things that you have to be very wary about as a product manager is that you're given enough resources, that you're given enough time to achieve the goals that are set out. Today, in the most products are quite forced. We were giving very short deadlines. Uh, some even at a extent where we're basically setting ourselves up to fail. There's no way we can achieve what we want inside the deadline that we have been given. And this needs to be discussed and needs to be addressed before the project starts. Well, and then delays itself. I mean, there's a lot of reasons why things get delayed. Uh, Customer can't make up their mind. The product sickness inside the project, technological choices that weren't really that smart. We need to redo things, and so on. So delays is obviously also a part of this. But also a question that one would have to ask is, what does done mean? When the project is done, does that mean? Does that mean we've achieved the project goals? If we can check off all the project goals, are we done then? Well, from a product management point of view, maybe, but from an executive point of view, probably not. I mean, there are goals and there are objectives, right? Objectives are more business and organizational related. From an executive point of view, maybe the completion of a project is when the objectives have been reached, when we've reached all those business uh, ideas or organizational goals that we had. But from a project, when we deliver the product, we've checked all of the specific requirements, then we're done, right? So we have to define what done means. How far does the project extend? What is the role of the project manager? What is the role of the executive or the sponsors of this project? This is something that needs to be discussed inside the organization as well, right? So if you wish, just take pause here for a second and think about what done means and the effects of having different definitions of done on different levels inside organizations on the product success and how we evaluate projects. All right, welcome back, I guess, if you did take a break. At the end, then, we're going to define, so what is the goal of product management? Well, simply put, one could say that the goal is to add value to your organization or the customer organization. Somehow the result of the project adds value to the organization. It makes the product range bigger, it makes our products better, it creates new products or services, or something like that. Or it makes old ones more efficient, for example. This means adding value. This could be more specifically some examples, making clients happier, making money, achieving some of the strategic goals that we have set out for this project, or just efficient use of resources. Maybe we have developed a resource allocation software that helps us to keep track of resources and making sure that they have work as much as possible inside of projects and so on, right? So obviously the number of examples here are endless, but at the end of the day, if you take away all the fancy word, the goals of product management is to add value in some way.